Hi everybody, so let's start to talk about taking these individual atoms we've been learning about and putting them together. When that happens, we make a compound. So, a compound is formed when two or more elements chemically bond. And notice that we're saying here that they've chemically bonded together. That's more than just like putting them nearby each other. Chemical bonds are really powerful and they totally change elements. A chemical bond is formed between two or more atoms by transferring or sharing their valence electrons. So remember when we learned about valence electrons? If you forgot what that word means, it's the outside electrons. Those are the really important ones, and they either transfer or share their valence electrons with each other, and it changes those atoms into totally different things, okay? But there's a couple different kinds of bonds. What we have to do is determine the type of bond. So we must identify what combination of metals and nonmetals make up the compound. So this is why we needed to learn, well, where are the metals and where are the nonmetals on the periodic table? So we're going to review that, okay? So first thing I want you to do is grab some colored pencils, and remember the divider between the metals and nonmetals is the staircase or the zigzag line. And so you can see I did mine here in red. Okay, you can pick whatever color. We need to remember where all of these things are. So the semi-metals or metalloids, I did mine in yellow. Those are the ones that are touching the zigzag except for aluminum. Nonmetals are to the right plus hydrogen. I did mine in green. And metals are everything else in blue, okay? You have to be able to identify metals, nonmetals, semi-metals, because then you've got to figure out, well, what happens if I put them together? So let's think about the different combinations here, okay? If we end up with two nonmetals, remember, so nonmetals are green, so two of these green ones, two nonmetals, then what happens is we have made a covalent compound, okay? Another possible combination would be if I have a metal in there, or if I see three elements total. Notice up here it was two. So as soon as you see a metal, or if there's a total of three, that compound is called ionic, okay? One of the things that can get confusing is, well, what about these yellow semi-metals? Are they metals? Are they non-metals? What do I do? So if you see a semi-metal, they act like non-metals when we're thinking about compounds, okay? So if you see a semi-metal and a non-metal, that would be like covalent, okay? So pretend that the semi-metals are kind of all lumped in with the non-metals, all right? So that's kind of an exception to the rule. Now let's talk about what those compounds mean. So let's talk about covalent compounds first. If it's covalent, then it has to have two nonmetals in it. And the way that that compound forms is by sharing the electrons. So it's much better for you to have covalent relationships in your life where you're sharing with one another. You don't want somebody to come and steal from you. We want to share. So covalent compounds are your goal in life, okay? There are some special covalent compounds that are called organic. So if they contain carbon and hydrogen, because both of these are nonmetals, if they have carbon and hydrogen, then it's still covalent, but it's like a special little extra group called organic. There's a whole separate branch of organic chemistry just based on these carbon and hydrogen compounds. Like it's a whole separate class. There's so much to do. You guys are organic because you're carbon-based life forms, okay? The reason we exist and we live and we breathe is because we are made of carbon and hydrogen. So that's a special kind of covalent compound. So let's talk about how a covalent compound forms, okay? What does that bond do? All right, we know it involves electrons. So the valence electrons get shared, and we share them so that all of the atoms achieve an octet, okay? If you forgot what octet means, remember that prefix oct means 8. So we're looking for 8 valence electrons. Not every atom has that, only the noble gases do. So by sharing electrons with each other, that way the atoms get to pretend that they have 8 valence electrons. So we're going to look at this example where we have 2 chlorine atoms separately, and we're going to see how they form a covalent bond. So here's an animation of it. Notice there's two separate chlorine atoms, but when they combine with each other, right here in the middle, right, when they're sharing that electron in the center, or those two electrons right there, then it's like they each have an octet, okay? That's why chlorine likes to bond with other chlorine atoms, okay? Then they each get an octet. So this shows you the formation of a covalent bond between two chlorines. So let's break down what's going on here. When we start off, each individual atom has 7 valence electrons. Well, that's not the octet that they want, okay? So when they bond, when they share, right here in the middle is the important part, okay? This is where the bond is formed. Once they are bonded, they each have a full octet. Remember, that means 8 valence electrons. So I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 valence electrons for that chlorine atom. And for the other one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 over there. Okay, so by sharing 1 electron each, now those atoms are happy and they each have their octet. Okay, let's look at another example. Water. Okay, remember water is H2O, so there's 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, all right? So let's watch that animation and see how that bond is formed. All right, so here's our water. We start off with